So first topic of the show, you mentioned them briefly with the Clippers. They were losing or tied to the Sixers right now.
They're soft.
Playing. That's what Tyronn Lue said about the Clippers. Ty Lue said that they're soft, they lack an identity. And just to give you a backstory.
Baby butt soft. Damn.
It feels like in the last week, things have been brewing. Paul George has openly criticized the effort on the team. James Harden had a quote where he said, "This is the first time in my career that I've been on a team with no identity." Some pretty harsh words, and this is how Ty Lue reacted, that we got to find our identity and that they're soft.
I think it's very interesting to see guys who went on a big stretch earlier in the year kind of hit a rough patch and kind of seem like they're giving up. I guess that's what Ty Lue was alluding to, stuff like that. I think we don't have identity right now. I've heard that so many times throughout the season, so I wasn't too upset about that comment. Defensively they lagged off. Offensively they got too stagnant. Ty Lue started putting out some funky lineups. So that comment I wasn't really aggravated about. It was really more on the comment Ty Lue said, the way James Harden was acting within the locker room, the Norman Powell caption that kind of made it a little weird, So I think same way how you talked about the Suns and the Clippers, you notice a lot of these older teams, guys with vets, are starting to collapse mentally and starting to struggle. And I think, that looming, championship or bust thing, that looming, our careers coming to an end and we kind of have to, get a championship, or we kind of have to make a run. Then with these young teams, these exciting teams kind of coming up, I think that stuff is starting to get to them, starting to crack to the years. I think the Suns and the Clippers specifically, they have to get it together. I think with the Clippers, it's just about defensively finding that identity. You can't have one or two guys on the floor just playing defense. You got to be connected 1 through 5. I do think they switch too much throughout the year, but they've had that problem all throughout the regular season, but they don't have the bodies to do that this time. I do think sometimes they get into this tough shot taking modes where they just take tough shot after tough shot. There's no motion, there's no sets. It's just ISO, ISO, ISO. I do think they do a little bit of that too much. And they rely too much on the 3-ball, and the shot making, which sometimes can cause funk, because you have a couple rhythm players. Like Harden's a rhythm player. PG's a rhythm player. If you don't hit these, if you just take tough shot after tough shot, it's hard to go through games and just continue to make that. So I think right now you have to look at the Clippers, and it's really hard to think this team can get to the Western Conference Finals at this point. You got a hungry Pelicans teams coming up. You got an on-fire Dallas team at the moment. They could be a team that's giving you trouble in the past. Now they have Kyrie. You got all these young teams, and you can't give them any – you don't have any room for error for yourselves right now, especially with April is in a couple days. The playoffs will start soon. This is a veteran team that kind of has to get it together.
There are two teams right now. Yeah, he's going crazy.
You just tweaked me out. God damn.
He did
Yeah, he's been waiting for that all season because unfortunately it hasn't been a lot of happiness for the Warriors.
You just saw a ghost, bro.
Not my fault.
One say ghost, some say something else. Yeah, correct. I was going to say. There's been two defenses post-All-Star break worse than the Los Angeles Clippers. Can we guess those two teams? Just take a guess. Yeah, there you go. One.
Detroit.
No. They've been better. Imagine that. The Detroit Pistons have been better than them post
The Blazers.
Raptors.
No.
The Jazz.
The Warriors.
The Jazz. The Utah Jazz. When you are in that company, respectfully, goodness gracious, there is something clearly going wrong. And yet, you're right, there is no identity, because when you guys were on one and you guys were playing high-level basketball, what was your identity? Oh, wow, we are a pretty great offensive trio. We have some things going on. We have some great depth on this team also. Also, we happen to have two great wing perimeter defenders in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, mostly Kawhi, but that's also when he picks and chooses. He is older. But I have James Harden now. Now I don't have to worry about who my point guard is because I have one of the better facilitators in the league. Our offense looked so free-flowing. It looked like everything was together. And then suddenly now we're seeing them where they were a pretty good defensive unit. They've become one of the worst in the league. And Tyronn Lue, defense really comes with toughness, aggression, just consistency. And there's been such a strong lack of consistency with the Los Angeles Clippers that, they are playing soft. Because at a certain point, you need to toughen up and lock in on the defensive side of the ball. And that can allow someone to call you soft. And also, using it as a little bit of a motivation factor. Someone calls me soft, I promise you, I'm going to put my best foot forward. So that's what a head coach should do, light a fire under their ass. I respect that. But we can also acknowledge the truth. The Los Angeles Clippers have not been a great basketball team as of late. But it's still one of those situations where even though I feel myself wanting to count them out, it's a respect factor for Kawhi Leonard. He can have an off night in the regular season like he's having tonight versus the Sixers. But to me, that's not going to change my opinion on, obviously, the playoffs for what he's shown me for every single time he's been in a playoff setting. That's kind of why I find myself still holding that little bit of hope there, understanding that Paul George may be having a bad game tonight, but for the entire month of March, it's been night and day between his stats in February and this current month that we're in right now. James Harden has been the piece that has been lagging behind, specifically in the month of March. He's been inefficient. He's been a liability on defense. I mean, that's been a majority of his tenure with the Clippers, but it's really holding them back right now where we currently stand. It really is all around a team effort that could just be put in a better situation if these guys would have put more effort forward. And it's the worst time for it to happen.
I think it's scary because you mentioned the All-Star break was that numbers,
correct?
Right? I'm looking at just the last 10 games. They had the third worst defense since the All-Star break. Their second worst defense since in the last 10 games. That is, the offense, like you mentioned, has still been great, top 8. But since February 25th, so that's like a week or so after the All-Star break, they've allowed less than 110 points just 3 times. Yep. Can you guys guess those 3 games?
Probably Trailblazers.
Blazers were 1.
The
Jazz?
Wizards.
No.
Detroit.
No.
Bad teams.
One's a good team.
One was, I was going to say, it didn't happen recently.
One's a good team.
Who was it? Who did the Clippers play? Cavaliers?
No.
Fuck, who was it?
One West team, one East team here.
Dude, remember it was 83, 82.
Oh, Minnesota.
Yes,
thank
Minnesota,
you.
89, 88.
That's what it was.
I love this new branch of trivia that we're doing.
Yeah,
now.
that's it.
Who did they allow less than
so
110
unprepared.
points to?
I'm so unprepared for it.
It was this is another bad team.
Yeah.
East, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be wasn't the Bulls.
Was the Bulls.
Oh shit.
Was Chicago.
Why you say bad team?
That's
So you
mid.
told me. Yeah, there we go.
Apologies.
That's all I asked.
Under
Can we
500?
go as far as say painfully mid?
We're good.
Are they under 500?
If we
No,
didn't have
they
Zach,
are.
if we didn't have Zach all year, we'd be over 500.
Yeah, for sure. But the defense has been a huge issue. Even having such a great offense, having the 8th best offense in the last 10 games, has resulted in a 4-6 record. And you mentioned James Harden, his struggles. They've been pretty apparent. He's averaging over these last 8 games just 13 points, 39% from the field, 31% from 3.
Ugh.
It's some really ugly averages. And
Sorry, James, you didn't deserve that.
the Clippers can get into, like Riv mentioned, like taking very difficult shots. And it's a lot of pull-ups, and you're relying a lot on Kawhi and Paul George. And James Harden, we've discussed, even I've discussed, saying that it's good for him, especially in the playoffs, because there shouldn't be as much pressure to be the second guy. But if you're the third guy, you can't be this bad. And I don't think James Harden is going to continue to be this bad. I mean, averaging 13 points and this terrible efficiency is so unlike him, even in his bad playoff moments. But he needs to be at the minimum efficient. He can't be shooting under 40% from the field and 30% from 3. That's just not going to cut it, even if you are a third option. And then you're going to put more pressure on the role players like Norman Powell and Russell Westbrook, who in their roles have been fantastic. But if you're asking them to expand their roles now in the playoffs against a great team, whether you're going to be playing Dallas or the Pelicans, whoever it might be, I don't love that situation either. Russ has been really good for them. He came back in this game against... Where's the most recent game? The Sixers, yeah. Scored 14 points off the bench. Electric, that typical Russ that we know. So it's great that they're getting him back, but I don't know if that's going to exactly fix their defensive issues. So I mentioned it in the start of the show. If Dallas and the Clippers were going into a playoff series tomorrow, I like my chances with Dallas. That's kind of where I am with the Clippers, and it's crazy because a month, 6 weeks ago, whenever I said these 3 teams can win a championship, the Clippers were in there. And I felt pretty damn confident about it because that's how good they were playing at that time. But you fast forward, a month or so later, and they've been one of the more disappointing teams the second half of the season.
This doesn't even feel like the same team. 26-5 from December to early February. 10-12 since the All-Star
Looked
break.
unstoppable, really, at that point in time.
And it's because they were giving effort on defense. I think their offense hasn't been a problem right now. Mm-hmm. It's still 6th in offensive rating post All-Star break in the last 15 games, one of those 2. Their offense has been getting shots. I think their offense has been a little bit worse than what it was early in the season. But the main thing, really, I come back to 3-pointers when I look at the Clippers and what's going to hold them back the most. Number 1 is I don't think they have a point of attack defender. Terrence Mann has been awful defensively. James Harden is awful defensively.
Correct.
PG, Kawhi, they aren't point of attack defenders that are going to give that effort at the top of the screen consistently. They don't have any defender. Norman Powell comes in. He is a liability as well. He can give some effort, but for the most part, he's not going to keep up with offensive players. They don't have that type of defender. And when you beat that first point of attack defender, you are constantly stuck in rotation, which if you face a team that moves the ball around, they're eventually going to find a great shot for themselves. The other thing is, I don't think traditional center lineups work for them. Zubac, it's very apparent when a team plays with pace and space. He gets played off the court. It happened against the Pacers the other night when they had Jarris Walker in there playing some good minutes.
True.
And he was awesome. He's one of the best players on the floor that night. 8 points, I think 4 rebounds, 7 assists. He was all over the place. And then the other center is Daniel Tice. And he is not going to give any resistance to the rim. But the problem is that when they go into small ball lineups, which is something that Ty Lue does all the time, his solution to a problem is always going small to give the Clippers more space. And you go into small ball lineups either to create advantage with speed or to match speed. They don't have speed in their small ball lineups because they're old. PJ Tucker is 38, 39 years old, playing the small ball 5 role. He cannot keep up. So he's too old. And then you have Amir Coffey, who he's been fine in his role, but defensively, he's not a stopper either. Their small ball lineups just don't have the speed and the pace to keep up with these high-powered, potent teams. The Clippers got some apparent issues that I don't think they're going to fix. And then when there's smoke, there's fire. Ty Lue is calling out the team. James Harden already feels like he has 1 foot out the door. Same with Paul George. Paul George will be a free agent. Kawhi Leonard, he's never had the style of leadership where he gathers the troops. He always kind of does his own thing. But even him, I start to have some concerns about how often can he really take over a game? Because there haven't been many games in the regular season where I see Kawhi just flat out take over. I think he only has 13 games this season amongst the 65 that he played where he had 30 points or more. For reference, Kevin Durant, I think, has about like 25 or 26 of them. I don't see Kawhi taking over. And I know in a history in the playoffs, he's the one that takes over. I just don't know if I'm expecting that. I feel like he is older. He's averaging 24 on great efficiency. But just if we're comparing Kawhi to the top players in the league, KD's averaging 27. Tatum's averaging 28. SGA's averaging 31. It's not a mistake because this team's going home in the first round.
But don't you think this is Kawhi?
Don't let it be Kawhi as the reason why.
I'm not saying Kawhi's
healthy
going to be the reason why. I'm saying in order for the Clippers to win in the playoffs, they need Herculean efforts from Kawhi Leonard. Because James Harden, while he might not be the number one option, he has the ball.
How many 30-point games you said?
13.
He had 10 in the year he took over the Dallas series and part of the Utah series. Just want to point that out.
He also had less games played.
Definitely.
Yeah, but just to point that out, he had 65 games played that year. So he'll get to 70 this year. So that argument, I could debunk that pretty easily.
I could, but you watch Kawhi Leonard play, he doesn't have the same legs.
If you say that, I can get with you.
But that's essentially what I'm referencing to. I'm referencing to that he just doesn't have the same legs. And even though this has been a healthier year,
the regular season, he's trying to, like Riv's using the word,
save it all.
Debunking the idea of, hey, I can play 70 games. I can do this. You like to think that load management's a huge part of my game. I can play this 70 while not giving 100% effort because that's kind of naturally I'm trying to cruise and make sure that when I get to the playoffs, I'm my best self. Don't get caught in him playing lackluster and allowing it to skew what you've known.
I never said he's going to play lackluster.
But you said that you can see a world. Did you not say that?
I never said he could play lackluster. His standard in the playoffs is what? Averaging 34.
Elite.
Yeah, elite. I'm crazy to say I don't know if Kawhi's going to average 34 in these playoffs.
No, that's not what you're
last
saying.
year was 2 games.
To be fair, your initial point was you haven't seen many games that he's taken over. He's only had 13.
He hasn't.
13 games. But the year where he had 40 in the playoffs against Dally twice, where he had 30 against Utah, he only had 10 30-point games in 65 games. He's not, at this point, a regular season player. He's trying to save that body for when it matters most. He's a Hall of Famer. Nothing in the regular season he does is going to matter.
That's not the debate here.
No, my point of saying that is that...
Has part of your reason of why... I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rick. Has part of your reason into why you don't know if Kawhi can reach those heights in the playoffs this year because of what he's shown you in this regular season, where he's kind of been cruising?
How he moves, how his body moves, the injuries that he's had over the course of his career.
How about this season?
I don't know if he still has the same lift on his
Because
legs.
last year, when that still was brought into question in the where you mentioned it was very few minimal games, he was
the best player
insane.
on the court.
I just said
With
earlier.
Kevin Durant there.
I just said
And
earlier.
Devin Booker. Well, Devin Booker was probably the best player in that series.
I just said earlier, the number one problem is not having a point of attack defender. And I think the lineup combinations, they can't play either or. I'm just
I agree
saying
there.
that Kawhi, in order for all these mistakes to be masked, he has to be Herculean. Because I don't think this is an awesome team the way they're playing right now. And I don't know if Kawhi is going to give me that level of play to where he can carry all of the issues with the Clippers. And you guys mentioned that Harden, he's this guy that's taken a back seat.
He's been struggling.
I don't think he is. And I think the reason why the Clippers are in a funk is because even though we know Kawhi's getting the last shot, Paul George's getting the second to last shot if the ball's in somebody's hands, they're the number 1 and 2 scoring options. The number one option with the player that got the ball in his hands is James Harden. He's making most of the decisions offensively. And when the head of the snake on offense that's running your offense is playing lackadaisical, is making bad passes, isn't able to get by defenders consistently, then we got an issue. I mean, that makes the offense run much less efficiently. The offense, because I feel like Harden looks a bit slow, is kind of running bad. And it's not even that Harden's been a bad player. It's that Harden is just not the same. The other night, he had 10-plus assists. I thought he had a great game, playmaking, playing his role. You look at it, and it's like 14 points. But that's the player he is right now, and they're expecting him to do a little bit too much. Russell Westbrook, they really needed his speed back in the lineup. But what hurts the most about James Harden is that he doesn't play defense. There were plenty of times that you watch the Clippers get a tough basket, and you have 4 defenders back on defense, and you have 3 offensive players coming towards you on a fast break, and they're still able to score in transition when you have more bodies defensively. And whenever they cut to the closest person to that bucket letting happen, it's James Harden. It's James Harden not moving and just letting players jolt by and get transition buckets. And when he is not showing effort in the half court, he is kind of sagging off a couple feet away and just, putting his hand up halfway. That is just affecting the energy of the team. And that's just how bad a negative defender can make your defense if he's not giving effort. And he's just not giving effort.
I would have thought this was James Harden's. I commend you though, because you're absolutely right. Like the fact that we have to come up here and I don't want to say defend James Harden, but when you break down defensively why they're having these issues, a big reason is because of the James Harden trade. I know you're the James Harden guy, but I just want to give you credit for that.
Listen, James Harden, I've been very critical of him.
You have been.
Because I feel like every situation, outside of the Nets, I'll give him some leniency with the Nets because that was just a disaster top to bottom. I feel like he's quit with the Houston Rockets. He quit. And with the Clippers right now, the way he's speaking about Tyronn Lue is bothering me because I feel like that is something that you have to handle behind closed doors. But maybe Ty Lue's not the most open coach. We don't know what's going on there. But I've seen Harden blast coaches publicly before. Kevin McHale, who was the coach for the Rockets in James Harden's early years, he blasted him and said that, he said that James Harden wasn't a leader, and how do you expect your teammates to play defense if you don't play defense? And Harden called him a clown. So dating back to early in his career, Harden wasn't able to accept that criticism. So maybe he's just airing that Tyronn Lue, and that's creating a negative energy around the locker room. So that, to me, I think is just a big problem there that this team can't get on the same page.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to their defense because when you look at these, teams that have the age factor, they don't really have a POA defender. Defensively, they're not really locked in. So I think with the Clippers, what was their bread and butter was, of course, their offense. But when you have players like that, Norman Powell shooting an efficient rate from 3-ball, you have Harden, PG, Kawhi. Offense is going to be at minimum top 10. But that defense was holding them together. They were connected when they were had that streak. They played 1 through 5. PG is still a great help defender. Kawhi is still a great help defender. I think once again, you got these young, firing, up-and-coming Pelicans that are looking for your head. They've got the confidence. They beat you I think they're 16-1 in like their last 17 games in the regular season. So they got that factor. Oh my God, amen. They got that factor in. You know what I'm saying? Like they got that confidence, that boost. They're young, they're athletic. They're the new kids on the block ready to take over. So you got that coming behind you, and then you're also not on the same page. That's 2 recipes for failure. You know, so you know, as a Clipper, like for the Clippers, you want to get on the same page these last 2 weeks. You want to gear up for the playoffs. You want to win this game right now that you are currently down 6 and you haven't led since I've been checking. So you want to win this game right now, but, you know, however, whenever they need to figure it out, it needs to be fast.
Yeah, and this is a game that you probably have circled if you're a Clippers fan as, hey, we need this one. This
Doesn't help that they're playing like shit.
Correct. But that's my whole point is at this point with the Clippers, when you're watching the Clippers, there's no easy game right now. They've made it so difficult on themselves. And that's what happens when you do show a lack of effort on the defensive side. So it'll be interesting to see how they do close out the season, understanding they looked early in the season.
They got some tough games in April.
Locked top 3 to finish the season. And now we're at a point where, hey, is this a play-in team? Can they legitimately fall into the play-in spot?
2 of their next 5 games, they do have the Hornets and Jazz. But outside of that, you're at the Magic, at the Kings, versus the Nuggets, Cavs, 2 at the Suns, 1 more with the Jazz.
You have
then
an
the Rockets.
opportunity to
Get
come
hot.
out on fire into the playoffs. Like, go in that streak. You know, win 4 or 5 of those games, be blazing going into the playoffs, and then you'll get that groove back.